you watch many of my videos, you already know by now I'm not all that easily impressed by supercars. 80% of them go to customers who use maybe 20% of what they can do, and I'm not sure I would do much more. But McLaren promises to get my attention with this guy, which they say is not just super high performance, but super livable. Let's find out as we drive the MP4-12C and check the tech. If you're not into car racing, or Formula One in particular, here's a short course on McLaren. They're serious. But with this inelegantly named MP4-12C, they've achieved a very elegant balance of street car and track car. Now, the biggest technology in this car is the active suspension. It creates both the Jekyll and the Hyde parts of this vehicle. Okay, this rolling chassis shows us some of the magic of the MP4-12C. First of all, this is a carbon tub. It weighs about 160, 170 pounds, that's it, and it is the primary piece of this car's structure. Front and rear, aluminum subframes. In the front, you hang the suspension off and it brings the front of the car to life. In the rear, you've got the engine mounted back there. Now, your typical car is going to have a sway bar running across here, and all the suspension components are largely being driven by gravity, the vehicle's weight, and the wheels across the car kind of tied together, fighting each other. What this McLaren does is this elaborate system of rather pretty plumbing, pushing fluid back and forth under pressure, varying pressure by the millisecond to these what appear to be coil struts. But in fact, what they're able to do is two things. They can push back in corners to keep the car level, doing what a sway bar does, but smart. And they can also change the shock rate, the damper rate. So the shock absorbers can go from being very firm to very soft, depending what kind of driving you're doing. After all that, the engine is almost conventional. Almost. 3.8-liter twin-turbo V8, doing 592 horsepower, 443 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 60 in about 3 1/3 seconds or less if you know what you're doing, and yet 1522 mpg. Told you it had a split personality. One gearbox, a 7-speed dual-clutch automated manual. Controlling all that power are these two switches that move the handling or the powertrain from normal to sport to track. I suspect you've noticed that LCD and wondered how it got that way. Well, McLaren mounted it in portrait mode to allow for a narrower console. To that same end, they moved the climate controls out to the doors. Navigation will be available along with all the modern audio sources, but that kind of tech isn't paramount here. This is.
Here's where it's truly amazing. You're right, it just doesn't run out of torque, does it? Now, the car really saved my ass on that last one. Stability control kicked in. Oh, right, forgot about that. That one always throws me. I'd be that guy you see on the television broadcast in the wall.
But a lot of cars can go fast around a track. Peeling off onto local streets, that's really eye-opening.
Now, this car's got many modes that go beyond the most comfortable. I'm in what's called the normal mode, and I'm letting it do everything automatically. But press the little button that says active, and then you've got a whole new world of possibilities. The toggle over here called H, that's your handling system. You've got normal, sport, and track. Pretty self-explanatory. There are levels of aggression for how the adaptive suspension works. And then over here, the one called P is performance, or powertrain, actually. Normal, sport, and track again. That's going to map your throttle and change how the gearbox operates. There's something else in this car that's part of these controls that you haven't seen before, uniquely McLaren. It's called the ISG, the intake sound generator. And check this out. When you go to the more aggressive modes, like sport or track, it's going to vent in some of that raspy, blood-curdling, hair-standing exhaust note. Just to remind you that you are driving a very impressive vehicle. Now, the car's got high-tech written throughout it, but not in the most extreme way. They still have a good old-fashioned analog speedometer. Around it, though, are full video gauges, bar graphs for oil pressure, water temperature, fuel level, and such, and all kinds of powertrain indications. Inside, this car is pretty damn comfortable for a car of its size. And I can't say that about every car in the supercar class. Some of them feel like you're driving a supercar all the time, which is cool, except you're not going to want to drive it that much. A car like this, I think you would. David E. Davis once said that anybody worth anything at all needs to own a 12-cylinder car once in their lifetime, because that's a real sound, he said, and there's nothing else quite like it. Well, this is an 8-cylinder car, but I can guarantee you it's also a real sound and a real operatic experience. We're about to enjoy that as we have one of the great look-at-me experiences of life in Los Angeles on a busy freeway with everyone looking. This guy's set to track, the exhaust flowing in and out of the car, and we're gonna hit it. If you like to turn heads, this is your ride.
If you're in the market for a $230,000 car, it's probably not your only car. But the 12C has a wide enough range of personalities that it could be both your second and third cars. It is utterly impractical. The DCT gearbox occasionally gets that confused look around town. They all do. And I could actually do without the exhaust noise feature aimed at the back of my head. It's throaty enough without it. But I think a few years from now, you'll find 12Cs on the resale market with some decently high numbers on the odometer. And for a car like this, that's the ultimate compliment.